Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 536 of Constructive Criticism. I'm your host, Spencer, and I just lost CCR. He's back.
Yeah, I don't know. Just really incredible timing that my internet just kicked off for like half a second.
Well, I'm joined by CCR. That's staying in the podcast, I'm not going to lie. And Dave Stein. How's it going, CCR?
It's going fine. I am slightly more nervous now than I was 10 seconds ago, because I have not been having any internet problems until just now. But other than that, like everything in my life is just great, is just fine.
I had a super important meeting with an engineer yesterday, and a third party software company that we're dealing with, and my internet went out exactly at the time of the meeting, and
Perfect.
it was great.
The ideal time.
Yeah,
the ideal time. Well, CCR, for those who don't know, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to be here. It's kind of funny that we have never had any like explicit crossover in all the time, because I know Spencer, I don't know you super well, although I've heard your voice, but Abe and I go back, and I know Mason pretty well, and we've had our fair share of conversations, just never recorded. So I'm excited for this, although we'll certainly miss Mason today.
Yeah, Mason out with some family stuff, but we got it. We got a pretty good guest. So today, as always, we like to have our guests, if they have something that they're passionate about or they're thinking about, give them an opportunity to kind of pitch what they want to talk about. And you picked a really good topic. You picked balancing in MTG.
I meant balancing on skateboards, but we can pivot. That's fine.
Oh.
I can talk about balance.
I will have to scrap all of my notes about riding fakie, because I was also prepared for that show. But I played enough to an X Pro Skater. We can talk about it in a different episode.
Great.
It's funny. My daughter, she likes to walk on the lines in the parking lot, and she'll be like, "Look, Dad, I'm on a balance beam," and I'm like, "Oh, that's cute." So we're not talking about that one today. No, we're talking about balanced MTG, and this is going to be more of kind of, I think, an open conversation for the most part. But I wanted to ask, like, what had you thinking about this? What had this be the topic that you wanted to talk about, CTR?
Yeah, so to be clear about like my thought process and intention and just kind of like defining this topic, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of balancing being a Magic player and also having the rest of your life. And it's something that I've thought about a lot, particularly as someone who I struggle to describe myself as a content creator, like capital C content creator. I mean, I make a podcast, but I don't really feel like that's a big like defining part of who I am, but it does take up quite a bit of my time. And so between playing Magic and making a podcast, Magic is a pretty significant portion of my life. And sometimes trying to figure out how much time to spend on that, how much time to spend on the rest of my life can be a little bit of a struggle. I am no expert on it. I've found things that work for me. I have things that I still am trying to figure out, and I'm really interested in talking about them with y'all, because I know like each of us has different sort of relationships with Magic and how much of our lives it takes up. And at this exact moment, I think that it's kind of particularly topical because we're about to get into our first year of 6 standard sets per year, which I think if you allow it to happen could really lead to some heavy burnout time-wise, and also heavy monetary expenditures potentially. I mean, 6 standard sets is a lot of standard sets, and especially if you're getting really into the like collecting Marvel card stuff, like you could spend a fortune on Magic the Gathering this year if you felt like it.
Yeah, I it's funny, for so long, like I actually want to talk about that particular thing, because like for a long time, for a lot of people, this is like, maybe they buy like a box or like a specific like cards that they need for their deck or whatever, and like those things now are gonna change faster. Like the whatever that expenditure that you're creating like is going to happen more quickly because more and more there's going to be an influx of more and more things that impact you. And I don't know about like Abe, like when we do the set review, like we have to literally sit down and look at every single card in a set. Like, and a lot of people like they'll browse it and stuff like that, but like I actually I think that like just that kind of time it's just it adds up and it adds up.
Yeah, and I think beyond that, even like when you start to factor in, okay, like what are the cards I need out of this release? If you're someone who maybe is like, okay, I try to have like most of the staples out of every set. Now I have some flexibility. Now you're looking at 150% of the normal level of that. Of like, okay, well I can skip the Commander Masters product or whatever, or like the Universes Beyond product. I don't need to touch that if I'm just a standard player. But now it's like, okay, well I need 4 of the staple cards for this deck. And that
got to
deck.
get all the Spider-Man.
Yeah, I need to have every Spider-Man in the multiverse, and I need to have
just
web
get the
slinging
Spider-Man knockoffs from China.
Yeah, maybe. Could also maybe.
I mean, I don't know about this podcast, but certainly the MTG Grindcast is a pro proxy podcast. So that I'm fine with that vibe.
We love a playtest card. A playtest card is your friend. Yeah, but it's looking at, especially in a time where we're seeing kind of the life breathed back into organized play as well, right? Like the big push towards standard being a competitive format that people can play tabletop at large in-person events, and I expect that to be something that continues to grow as we become more and more normalized towards kind of the way things used to be since the COVID-19 pandemic, like what that looks like and how the game as a product has changed and how people are being asked to engage with it by WotC, and then also like how you as someone who wants to engage with that and wants to be a part of these organized play structures that are I believe positioned to grow and continue to develop, like if you, and we talk about it a lot on the show, if you don't really have an intentional process behind that, it is very, very easy to get swallowed up in that. I know that's something that Mason and I, at least a couple times in the show, have been really transparent about, is like, yeah, we've gotten to the point where we are as Magic players where we do a lot more theory work or a lot of, not playing for stretches of time and then picking up and really grinding it out. And it's like, but a lot of that is built on the foundation of what most people would consider a very unhealthy balance of life, right? Like a lot of that was a product for me of I was in community college and working at a card shop for portions of it, and otherwise was just like, well, I'm not at class, I don't have work to do, so I'm playing Magic and
getting your 10,000 hours in.
Dude, I was in the Moto streets in my college classes when I was doing college. Like,
so that bridges really well into my what does an unhealthy relationship with Magic the Gathering look like?
Yeah, and for those who don't know, I dropped out of college, so there were signs.
I made it, but that took a lot of planning too. That was a process. That was the amount of times I had classes that were like low effort classes where I was like, okay, I'm going to get exactly like an 82 in this class overall because I'm skipping these 4 assignments so that I can do these 4 other things. You got to be intentional about it no matter what. There's only so many hours in the day, and if you're given too many of them to Magic, I joke about this, but probably looking back at it, and especially if my family and loved ones knew exactly what my relationship with Magic looked like, they'd probably be sitting me down in a chair and saying dude, what are you doing? Because you can't, not everyone can live that way, and you should not be encouraging yourself to really spread yourself too thin in other areas of your life and to play Magic, right? There's a way to have a balance there and to succeed, and that's really what striving to find that is takes.
Yeah, and I think so. I have a couple of notes written here that I want to touch on, and I do think that as an initial caveat, I think a lot of people may be listening to this podcast and thinking what the hell are those guys talking about? Like, this is a game. I play it when I want to, I have fun playing it, and I don't play it when I don't want to, and it's fine. And I think that there are a lot of people that have that relationship with Magic the Gathering and treat it like, you know, like a video game, like a non-World of Warcraft video game or something, just like I play this and have fun playing it, and are maybe a little confused. I mean, maybe a lot of your audience is like bros like us who feel this in their soul, but I do think, especially like in the commander community and stuff, there are a lot of people who this is not really a concern because you play, once a week, a couple times a month, something like that. You don't have to keep up like with everything because you're just like playing the cards that you like. And I think that can be just a really healthy, really fun way to play Magic.
And they don't
But
have a
that's
choice. All their
not
games take 3 hours, so like they can only slot in
right.
so many.
That's true. You can only play so many games. But and maybe it can be not just Commander. It's like I used to play a lot of Magic, and now I draft like twice a month at my local store, and that's what I enjoy doing. And I don't think that the issues we're talking about here really apply to people who approach Magic like that. But for me, that approach to Magic is not fun. That's not what I want when I'm playing Magic. What I want is to do the deep dive, to get into whatever format matters to me at the time, put in a lot of work, and hopefully get results reflective of that work. And when you have goals in playing the game, then that leads to this kind of like unending quest for the truth is I think a place that you can end up in exploring a format. And there's this kind of sense of, if I don't put enough time into this format, then I have like failed myself and my goals. And I think that can end up leading to some kind of grim places sometimes, investing in an RCQ season and not getting there and feeling like you've wasted your time because you have set your goals in a way that allows you to like fail because of variance, which I think is really dangerous. And I, I think that I don't think that there's inherently a problem with playing Magic competitively and wanting to put the time into it to get good and to understand a format and to show up at an RZQ and feel like you have the best deck in the room and feel like your plans against all of your opponents are better than their plans against you because you put in more time and better hard work and you had good conversations with people who are smart, who know things you don't, and did all of those things that you're supposed to do. Like when those stars align, like there are very few feelings in the world that are better than that, and it's worth the effort to kind of get there. But there are also times that you kind of get lost in the sauce, and I have definitely experienced that. And I think that I just want to talk about ways that I have avoided that sometimes, and ways that I've kind of failed to avoid that sometimes.
Yeah.
And in
Oh, sorry.
on top of that, the whole like content creation thing, like I know each of us has multiple hours per week just kind of like blocked off to making the podcast, writing an article, the things that we have kind of created as obligations for ourselves. And at some point, the amount of time that we're putting in can be it can be pretty taxing.
I agree, and I also think that something that we haven't said yet that we should mention is like this is also different for every individual, and so like we're not coming at this as like you should do what I do for my unique situation, because that's not going to work. You need, we're going to talk about probably developing a process, but it has to be your personal needs and your personal things, because Abe can't. I mean, we have thousands of listeners. You couldn't pick one out of the crowd and tell them exactly how to do this.
Oh yeah, definitely not. And no two people are gonna be the same. I think that CCR, you hit it on the head when you were talking about goals. Like when you think about really what is he looking to accomplish, many players have many different sets of goals, and even your own goals as a person and as a player, right? Your priorities in life and your priorities in relation to Magic can change at the drop of a hat. Like for me, since the last RC, I have not had an intention of playing an RCQ for like the last 3 months. Great, that was back around Labor Day, because I knew that coming up, I had a large vacation 5,000 miles away to go to Hawaii to see my friend get married, which was wonderful, and I'm glad I did it. But also that meant that at work, I had to like really double down and really crunch a lot to make sure that I was ahead on everything I needed to be ahead on, to not feel overwhelmed at the time where that vacation happened. And when I came back, that I would be moving, which I'm currently amidst the process of doing. Listeners probably can't really tell because there's still my art up on the walls, but like this room on the other side of it is like practically empty. I'm like half. In fact, if not for my huge L desk, I would be doing this from my new place right now. But this thing is a pain to move, and we weren't able to get like time and a truck to do it until Friday. So this is like gonna be the last time you're probably going to see this room layout from me for the YouTube listeners. But I've known that this was going to be the end of my year, and my Q4 personally was going to be, my goals in Magic are to stay on top of things enough that come next year and come the end of this stretch of craziness going on in my personal life, I can jump back in and feel like I know what's going on, right? Like, and that has changed just a lot of how I've chosen to do things and how I've allocated my time. And I think that's great. I think that those goals you have for yourself, whether it's that you want to be someone who, does a draft or two at their LGS and tries to win at those, or wants to hit Mythic on Arena, or just wants to be able to like win their Winnaboxes or whatever it is they're playing. I mean, I think something great about your show, CCR, about Grindcast, is that you and Lee have such different ways of engaging with Magic, and I think those perspectives really, like, you're a player who leans a lot more on online than Lee is. So Lee, I don't think you could like pay Lee to play Moto like for
That's
like
pretty
exclusively
true. Yeah.
for like a month. Like he would just say no. Like he would much rather be in the streets of the LGS, like jamming games and like being around people. But both of those are really valid ways to find success and find what you're looking for out of engaging with Magic. And right, it's about being aligned with your goals. Like what makes it sustainable, like what's made it sustainable for me to compete at the levels that I have for half my life at this point, like are because I've been able to orient my goals accordingly. And I think that for anyone, any amount of enjoyment or having a sustainable engagement with Magic and being able to have it be a part of your life that's additive and not something that starts taking away from the other things that are important to you is a real challenge, especially as you get more and more engaged and interested and want to achieve more and push yourself, because it's really, like you said, it's really tempting to get down that rabbit hole and get lost in the sauce. But I think especially on the SCG tour, I know that I saw it all the time. I know that I'm sure living in the Lotus Box house, CCR, you experienced some of those moments too, of like you really have sometimes over leveraged your position emotionally in investing in your hobby and in this thing that you're pursuing. And no one wants to be in that spot emotionally or God forbid financially or whatever it is that can come from that, like being unwilling to admit that maybe you've overcommitted yourself and that you have unrealistic goals for yourself can really lead to a lot of bad outcomes. And that's like a big thing to acknowledge and to keep in mind, so you can make sure you're not finding yourself in that position, because it is a reality people face.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the SEG tour, and I miss the SEG tour, and I think a lot of people do. I did see some amount of the kind of bad incentives created by this like almost never-ending treadmill of weekend tournaments. There, I want to be able to stand here and say, hey, like however you are engaging in Magic, like do it in a way that's fun for you, take breaks whenever you need to. But there are reward systems and there are incentives that specifically reward putting large amounts of time in ways that are probably not that healthy, in like small windows, relatively speaking, and stuff like, getting points on the SCG tour was something that, there were the guys in my house, and I was not doing this because I was not engaging in the same way, but basically every single weekend, we're at an open or we're driving to multiple IQs that they could get to just to squeak out like some bare number of points. And I think that they were rewarded by the system for doing that because the incentives were there for doing it. And that sort of thing does exist. These external rewards for over leveraging yourself absolutely exist in a lot of spaces. Content creation in particular. I know streaming. I remember reading a thread by I think it was Amy Amazonian, just like writing about how uh like taking just a couple of days off of streaming, you come back and you've lost like 20-25% of your viewers just because of kind of like a combination of how the Twitch algorithms work and people like getting out of the habit of watching you and that sort of thing. And that's not a healthy set of incentives. Like you must stream every single day, like take max like one day off and then get back to it. That's not great, but I can't stand here and say that that doesn't exist. Like that's unrealistic for me to say like that, if you want to be successful in streaming, the system is that you have to do some kind of unhealthy stuff to get there. If you wanted to be successful on the SCG tour, I mean, some guys were really good and were making it work without like stretching themselves too thin. But I think the vast majority of people that were at the top of the leaderboard were traveling constantly, were, testing constantly, and were kind of making this their entire thing, which can be okay if you've made that decision and understand the decision that you're making. I don't know that it's tough to ever say that Magic is going to. Sorry about that. It's tough to say that Magic is ever going to be kind of worth doing that. The rewards are not always there, especially financially. But if you understand the decision you're making and you go into it with eyes wide open and knowing like I'm spending this many hours on this each week and I'm okay with that, my situation allows me to do it, that can be all right. It's kind of the definition of addiction is it's not an addiction until it starts to harm you. Just because you do something all the time and want to do it all the time doesn't make it an addiction until it's having a negative effect on you or the people around you. And there's certainly ways that you can be really, really deep in a game without it necessarily being detrimental to your life. But I think that you know it's a slippery slope. You can fall off of that trail and start spending more time than you meant to, start sacrificing things that you didn't necessarily want to sacrifice for it. And so I have some like kind of actionable things, and one of the things is checking in with yourself and making sure that you're doing these things because you're deciding to do them and not just because they're kind of happening to you. Like, oh, I'm off to another tournament because a tournament is happening and I'm not looking forward to it at this point. Well, maybe it's time to start questioning, kind of what you're doing with your commitment to this endeavor.
I think I have such like a different perspective from you two, because one, I live in Utah. Like, with the idea of like, what the SCG tour would come out to, like, Texas sometimes, or like maybe they'd go to like somewhere in California, or Vegas was like the a thing that they did a lot for a while. So like, I had an SCG tour every, I don't know, 6 months to play in. Or the Grand Prix that were close by were like, kind of whatever. But I never, 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 I I don't know that I've always been inherently good at this with Magic, because there are certainly times in my life where I was not good at it with Magic. But like, I would skip PTQs in, like, I'm not going to this Vegas one. I just went to a Boise one the other day, like the other week, and like I would be very intentional about picking, and I still am, like, on my Google Calendar with my family. I support the stores that I love, and I don't hit an RCQ every single weekend. There's a lot of them that I will not be hitting, and at some point it kind of changed for me, and I think I've talked about this on the show before, where like getting to the Pro Tour has not been a priority for me in I don't know. I don't know. I like since honestly probably since Pro Tour 25 anniversary. Like, that was probably the last time that I really tried. And I think part of that is, like, one, my life changed, right? Like, it was really easy to do a lot more Magic when I was in a long distance relationship. So, like, the girlfriend time was like Skype at night, or whenever she, if she'd come to visit on a weekend. Into getting married and then having kids, and then, I mean, I literally quit the podcast for 8 months.
Yeah.
For just and Magic, just because like I needed that time with my family, with my son, with my wife. And I'm not saying like you have to go all out and like quit Magic, but I think
nobody ever quits Magic.
Yeah. But I think something that you just said about it needing, or maybe it was Abe, one of you talked about it being an additive, and I just think that, like, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, if you're going to a tournament, you're like, why am I going to this? Like, why are you then? Like, what is the possible reason for you to be in this, hour-long car drive to a place that, like, an RCQ that you don't want to play in? Like,
and I will say, for me, that is so I'm actually in a kind of like opposite spot here, where I have been too judicious about not going to certain RCQs and kind of restricting my range down a little bit more. And I'm trying to make a concerted effort to head out to more of them for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think that the main way that Magic is additive to my life is that it's, when you're an adult, I'm 36 years old, it is difficult to I'm not necessarily concerned about making new friends. I have a lot of, I have friends that I love, but it's so difficult to get people together for stuff. And our society is extraordinarily atomized, and we live in these little bubbles that do not intersect unless you choose for them to intersect with other people. And you generally need a reason for people to get together most of the time. I have friends who do it a little differently, and they have regular just like dinners and hangouts together, and unfortunately most of that stuff happens over on the other side of town from me, and it's a little, I need to get out to it more, but it's a little too much of a drive to do it as regularly as I would like. But Magic, for me, like, one of the hugest things, one of the things that keeps me coming back to it, is it provides that excuse to get together with your friends and spend time face to face with people that you care about. And in particular, like, I'm just trying to go to more RCQs because I have missed out on my local scene a little bit. And I went to a couple RCQs and I met some young players who are playing really well. And like, these are, new Magic players in the area that I absolutely would have been like very aware of when I was playing more actively locally, and would have like, at least had conversations with them and knew who they were, and, helped them get to tournaments and stuff like that. And, there were just a bunch of unfamiliar faces. And I don't love that. I love being part of my local scene because, this is one of the ways that I've met some of the people that I care about the most in the world. And it's one of the ways that I make sure to actually keep spending time with them. And to me, that's how Magic is additive to my life. And when I know it's like, it's not the Magic is the Gathering, it's just such a, at this point, it's like very overplayed, but I do like, I'm going to go to Atlanta, get in a hotel room with Jarvis, and it's going to be a fun weekend because I get to like see my friends that I don't get to see very often, and I'm going to be doing something that I enjoy doing with them, and I'm going to lose some matches to bad beats and commiserate, and that's I don't know, that's how I want to spend a weekend, and hopefully you hope you do a little bit better and you put in the time to make that a possibility. And that it can be such a joy to play Magic, right? And losing that is such a powerful loss when you're so into it that you are overwhelmed, and because you aren't confident in your deck choice, you're letting that like drive your emotions and put you into a bad place because you're so invested in doing well. And I think it's good. I think it's good to be invested in doing well. I think it's good to want to do well. I think it's good to put in the work, but there are ways that it can cost you more than it probably should, when ultimately like going and playing a game with your friends is one of the most joyful things that I can think of to do.
The amount that you just made me miss like old school PTQs, like just, the stories that came from those road trips were immaculate. They were, I mean, I think that you really hit something that I thought about 2 weekends ago when I stopped by to pick up some cards from our former sponsor, Gingrad Lehigh, and they were having a sealed RCQ, and I didn't recognize a lot. I mean, like, the large majority of players playing that sealed event. And, I think that, every single one of my groomsmen, when I got married, were people on my testing team. Like, every single one of them.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, if you ask somebody that, like, that sounds unhealthy, but I think that the thing is that it's actually the healthy part of what this game does when you get that entrenched.
Yeah, for sure. And
sorry.
No, go for it.
I was gonna say, you guys have the exact like opposite reaction that I have to when I see like a bunch of new faces. Like, I experienced this a lot when I was like switched from being someone who was playing a lot locally to then playing SCGs back in like 2017 2018. Like, I remember enjoying going to like a random one-off PPTQ in like the one season where I wasn't bronze, so I didn't have like an RPTQ invite, and like going with my friend who had not been traveling. We used to just go to all these things together, and then showing up and then all being like, oh man, my boy's Chris is here, he's gonna like, he's in top 8 for sure, and then be like, who's his friend? And I'm like, what happened?
Yeah.
what like, and then get to play into that and be in the challenger again, or like showing up to an FNM like unsleeved, being like, I don't know, man, what do my cards do? And then like whispers across the table like, is that the guy? Like, I love that stuff because I think that really, for me at least, I enjoy like the myth of competitive Magic, and like what makes the PTU special is like having these people. Like, there was a random player from Philip, I'm not going to name drop him because I don't really know where he's at now, but he would always wear this one like baseball cap with a big like bloodshot eyeball on it, and for the longest time I didn't know his name, so we just all referred to him as Eyeball Hat. but like where else are you gonna get that if you don't have like those kind of unknown names? Like, someone, like, the first time you meet someone, you're like, oh yeah, this is that guy. Like, it just, the fact there is so much new blood and getting to like experience that, as much as it's like, damn, like, I didn't know who that was, and I feel like I should, because I should know everyone, and I've done this for so long, and like, this is my community. I don't know. There's a lot of fun to be had when you see the community grow in ways that there's new corners to shed your light in.
Oh yeah, I just, I agree completely, and I'm glad every time I show up and see people that I don't know who are engaging in the game in the way that I enjoy. You know, like I had a chat after like my first round of the last RCQ with a player who I had met before, but you know, young guy who I didn't know well, and we played a mirror. And then after the match, we spent a bunch of time talking about sideboard options and like how weird the Demir mirror is and stuff. And it felt really good to kind of connect like that with a new player who is clearly treating the game the way that I did when I was his age. And you know, you see how things build over, like he's certainly better than I was at his age by a lot. There's a lot of ways to improve. There's a lot of stuff to build on, and he's taken advantage of a lot of it. And I love seeing that. And it just gives me a little bit of a sense of loss for the opportunities that I've missed to, you know, have done that with other people. But all that means is like I know that I will enjoy it if I keep showing up. And for me, prioritizing getting to these tournaments is I mean, I think you used the right word, Abe. I think additive is good. And I think that there is a misleading element to saying like balance between Magic and your life, because really like Magic is incorporated in my life. It's nested into all these different aspects of it. It exists as a critical component of my life as it exists, as I've kind of like developed it, both intentionally and unintentionally. Like I've made certain choices in constructing my life to prioritize the things that I want to.
I mean, you're sitting here on a Magic the Gathering podcast, so clearly you've made
certain decisions, right? Yeah, like my office is a recording studio. I you know, when I was looking for houses to buy, I made sure to like one of the draws was, hey, I could easily visualize this space working well as a recording studio. I bought the house during COVID when we were running online tournaments and doing coverage for them. And like part of the reason that I liked this house is that I could visualize the setup for like, okay, here's the room where we're going to have casters. And then here's the room where we're going to have like people doing the back end for stuff. Like that's honestly like part of the reason that I bought this house that I bought, is to do some of that stuff. And then also the space was very good for people coming over and drafting. And so that was nice. My job is relatively predictable and low key, which is good for me in multiple ways. It allows me the time that I need to pursue the stuff that actually like really gives me joy in this life, including playing Magic the Gathering, including reading science fiction novels, including spending time with my girlfriend. But it also is, you know, I recognize my own limitations. I have ADHD. I am a lawyer. Somehow I like have like both of those things are going on. There are certain versions of lawyer that I just couldn't be, and I am not going to cause myself the anxiety that would come from like trying to fit myself into that box of I can't go. I know that I can't go work at a big law firm and be successful there for multiple reasons, but primarily because I just like wouldn't be able to do the work and feel like I was getting my stuff done. I just couldn't. I wouldn't be able to hack it, and I know that. And so knowing myself, I kind of tried to make decisions, sometimes successfully, sometimes not that successfully. But I do think that treating, if Magic is as important to you as it is to me, and maybe there aren't that many people that Magic is as important to them as it is to me, but for those that have something like that or have Magic and it's that important to you, I think you can incorporate it into your life in a really healthy way, as long as you're realistic about what it represents to you and understand like where the value really comes from. For me, that value is heavily, I love spending time with a lot of the people that I've met through Magic, and the like testing and practicing process, like I love hopping on a Discord with some of my close friends and figuring out a matchup. And there's this solving a puzzle together just feels so rewarding to me, and I've figured that out over time. Like, this is what I love to do, and I'm not the greatest at solving the puzzles, but trying to do it is kind of rewarding in and of itself.
I'm glad that you mentioned work, because it's one of the things that we kind of haven't talked about yet. I mean, we all have very different jobs. You know, I the last, I don't know, Abe, you know me, I think, the whole time. How long have I been working for startups again? You know, I were product manager in startups and startup culture, and, you know, Abe, you're in banking, and, you know, we got a lawyer here. Like, these are but what's funny is these are all actually, like, pretty demanding jobs. And I wonder if something that we might want to talk about is, like, a little bit of compartmentalization that has to happen in order to, like, go from, you know, whatever. I mean, I don't want to, like, I think all jobs are hard, but, like, you know, going from this job that is important and demanding of you to, like, okay, now when I go home, I'm gonna go play a league of Modern, or I'm going to, you know, read over the cards. Like, that's some, like, real compartmentalization that I don't really realize that I do. Like, I don't think that I've ever processed the fact that I have these buckets that have to get filled before my Magic bucket. Does that make sense? Do I sound crazy?
No, I mean, no, it completely makes sense. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. Like, I've had so much going on that even though a big part of me wants to, like, really dig into Standard or, like, spend time. I mean, maybe not with Modern until the ban announcement. There's a pretty big part of me that's very grateful that I'll be done moving exactly the day of the ban announcement, and all my stuff will be there, and I'll be, like, out of the old place entirely. On, like, the 16th should be, like, very much the very last day, or I should have been done by, like, 2 days, unpacked and everything. And then I get to find out what Modern looks like and start preparing for the RCs. Like, I really do get to do that, but otherwise, like, do I read every deck list dump? I try to, but I haven't been. Do I get to play every Standard deck I'm interested in? No, because I have these other things going on between, you know, making sure that I'm, you know, prepared and on top of things at work or in my personal life, or, you know, managing myself, that are that much more important. I think that, you know, to kind of segue this towards, you know, kind of, not just sitting around talking about our lives and how great Magic is and how it fits in and how we make that happen, but, like, how we make that happen, you know, like, how that compartmentalization happens, I think is really important to talk about, because so much, at least for me, like, so much of how I organize myself now is not things that, like, I just was doing from the start. You know, it's I pick things up from other people, or, you know, get to understand how other people organize themselves, and understand people's processes for things inside and outside of Magic, and adapt that. So I'd love to hear, like, from you guys. I mean, personally, I'm a big proponent, and I've talked about on the show multiple times, you know, setting goals, identifying priorities to achieve those goals, and then acting on them, and, like, really managing yourself and your time to accomplish the things you need to, and being very intentional about time. Like, that's how I manage, like, myself to stay on top of, be it if I have, like, you know, a month where I have 2 coaching sessions a week, and also I've got events I'm preparing for, and also I know that on this weekend, I need to make sure I schedule myself to work the Saturday of, like, the 12th, so that I can then make sure I'm off on the day of the tournament. But also that means, you know, like, it's a process to make sure I can even play one event and be on top of it, and all the things I want to make sure I'm taken care of. But, you know, I guess how do you guys maintain that for yourselves? Like, what's worked for you, and what are some strategies around that you guys have? That
I think that, like, one of the things that I always say, whether it's like in a job interview or like kind of about myself, and honestly, I think I really like what you said, like that you weren't like this originally, or like that your process wasn't like this originally, because honestly, fitting magic into my life, and then also having the job that I have, turned me into a process-oriented, results-driven person. Meaning that the process has to iterate and happen, and then if the results don't line up to what I want, then we adjust the process. And
I've stolen this for like every job interview I've ever had. By the way,
because
it
of
works
me.
so well. Man, very man. It's your favorite.
Yeah, it does. It does go over really well.
Itself.
But also, like, I think that is true about both of us. Like, I do believe that is how both of us work, and like, but I think I work that way because I like a lot of things. Like, I want to watch. Like, it's, for example, like we used to have movie night every Friday at my house, and like with the kids, and like it was not working the way that I wanted it to work. So now movie night is a surprise. Like I get the kids, I'm like, okay, we're having movie night tonight on this Friday, but it's not like a thing that's every Friday anymore, because the results of movie night were a lot of headaches and fighting. Whereas if it became spontaneous for the kids, they enjoyed it more. And like the same thing happens in Magic for me, where like, I talked a lot about the my favorite times. Let me just say this instead. My favorite times in Magic are times where I had a group of individuals I surrounded myself that all had the same goal. That I think CCR, you talked about this a little bit, but like that had the means to that goal, and that happens by developing what works for both individuals and the group as a whole. But you also have to recognize that everybody comes from a different place, and because of that, your own individualized process has to help the group's larger process. And the way that I did that was taking on responsibilities of like kind of the organizer. I'm not like the most organized person outside of Magic and honestly like this podcast and stuff. And I think that it's something that I could get a lot better at work, for example. But what I have is a set of skills. No, what I have is I've developed the things that I know work for me, and they also, like I said, that process oriented, results driven thing. That process has to change. I used to go to LGS's almost every single day of the week when my girlfriend was hundreds of miles away, like literally every single day. And that, guess what, you can't do married with 2 kids. You can't do that. So I had to learn. I used to be so anti-Magic Online. Like I hated it. I talked about it on this podcast. I thought the interface was terrible. I couldn't do it. And I had to bite the bullet. And then when Arena came out, I was one of the beta testers. Like actually technically the podcast was one of the beta testers, but I was the one with the account. But yeah, I think that like adjusting the process is the number one tip I would give. Like, you have to have that mindset to go into, okay, here's what I'm going to try. And if I'm not getting the results I want, kind of like what you said, CCR, about like set the goal, develop the process to get to the goal, and then manage from there.
Yeah, it's very important to be calibrated towards that.
And I think that we should be clear that goals, like, it's a very wide range, and there's a lot of very any goal that you have is acceptable. If it's like, I want to use Magic as a reason to hang out with my friends once a month and cube together, like, that's a wonderful goal. I like support that and like wholeheartedly. If it's I want to give myself the best shot at qualifying for the Pro Tour, and here's what I'm laying out as my kind of roadmap to hopefully do that, then yeah, I agree. But neither one is like more legitimate than the other. They're both, Magic is such a huge, it's many, many games in one, right? And there's a lot of different ways to approach it. I also want to kind of acknowledge the privileges that we have in getting to choose our goals and getting to choose how we engage in the game. I mean, like, let's be very honest for 1 second. We're all, not to speak for anyone, but like, I am a cis white guy. A lot of things are kind of handed to me in a lot of ways. I am not wealthy, but I have a decent job and I'm pretty comfy, and it's not a big deal for me to pay for a hotel room every once in a while, go to Magic tournaments, fly there if I have to. It's a thing that I have access to that certainly not everybody does, and Magic cards are very expensive too. And while we are talking about like, yeah, this thing has brought me a lot of joy, I really love it. I love the community, I love the friends that I've made. I've also spent quite a bit of money on it over the years in various ways, and not everybody has access to that. And I don't know, I guess I don't necessarily like have a point that I'm like aiming at specifically here, but I just want to acknowledge that like there are probably better ways than we have right now of enabling, like, you know making sure that your friends who don't necessarily have these resources still have some way of engaging with, your play group, however that looks.
Yeah.
Making spaces for people who are not as represented in, the heavily male, heavily white Magic community. And I think that because I've gotten so much out of it, I would like to make sure that opportunities are available to other people to also kind of, get similar things from it.
I'll acknowledge something as well. Like, we used to start this, we were pretty I tried to be pretty transparent on the podcast when we'll use Oasis Games as an example, who was the sponsor of this podcast for, I don't 7 years, 8 years, I don't even know. But like, one of the benefits of the sponsors that we had, CCR is blacked out again, but I'm just going to keep going because I know it's coming back. I like Oasis gave us access to their inventory. They're like, hey, as part of the sponsorship deal, we'll give you guys this amount of money per episode, but in addition, you can just, you submit an order, say that you're borrowing it for a GP or whatever you're doing, and like, we will put that deck on hold and you can use it. And it's no surprise that really helped people like the Hinder Father, former co-host, now Wizard of the Coast employee, Matt Kling, who was a co-host. Like, the reason that it is definitely one of the reasons we all made it to the Pro Tour. Like, without a doubt, could not have been done without Oasis Games and their sponsorship. And that's huge. And I don't want to pretend like we weren't in a privileged position with that sponsorship of that, because of that. Sorry.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, I think that when you're talking about your own goals and what's realistic, I mean, I think at this point it's very safe. I feel very safe saying that a goal for all three of us, and part of the reason I think all of us continue to engage in content creation despite the time sink that it is, and that we're putting a lot of time in really just out of the love of the game and helping other people, is that we want to give back to this community that we're a part of, and that that is a part of our goals with engaging in Magic as well, whether that be that I'm able to provide guidance and help to a player who's ambitious and younger and wants to really engage or improve, or even that means like I can lend them fetch lands or whatever so they can go play Modern, right? Like, the fact that I can ease some of the economic burden of entering a new format, or getting the opportunity to expose them, right, or swapping decks with them at a local, like doing things like that to give them exposure in ways they wouldn't get otherwise because they don't have the money to rent, like to sign up for a Mana Traders account and then blow a bunch of tickets on leagues, right? Like they don't have maybe they don't have rides. Like I honestly, like I was playing Magic when I was 16 or 17. My parents were like astounded I was able to convince so many people to give me rides places. They're like, you should, I don't know what you should use this talent for, but like you're 16 and you've convinced these like 19 or 20-year-old kids on their college breaks to like come pick you up, drive you to Frederick, Maryland, an hour from here to go play a Super IQ, where then you're going and doing better than them and they're driving you back and like you're giving them like peanuts gas money. What's this racket you're running? But because the generosity of those players, I was able to have the fall in love in the way that I did, and play in the way that I did, and compete in the way that I did, and get the opportunities that I did to get to play against some of those players in my area and enjoy the hobby that I have. And I do agree it's really important to pass that on and to make sure, kind of on the flip side of that, if it's something that's not realistic for you, there are tons of other ways to engage, or ways to find joy in Magic or in other things. And I think an oftentimes thing that leads to burnout and a lack of balance is where people don't recalibrate their goal with what they want. Like you think you want to play an RC or qualify for the Pro Tour, but maybe things have changed and the game's not in a place where you enjoy the way the formats are right now, or you just haven't really enjoyed it in a while because you're playing too much, or other priorities come from your life and you keep on chasing the same goal that's not going to make you happy. So then you're kind of doubly sinking yourself.
Kind of like you and I skipping an entire Modern season. Yeah, you and I just both just like peace out.
Oh, I skipped that season too. Yeah,
I skipped 0 matches of Modern, qualified for both RCs. Both at the RC in DC. I did terribly in the main event, but I managed to snag 2 keys.
That's so
very, very lucky.
You said something there. I know that we probably should wrap up here in a little bit. I said this episode would be conversational. I've really enjoyed it, but like you talked about carpooling, and it is underappreciated, I think, how just that planning aspect teaches you to plan around other things, because the organization of getting 4 Magic players in a car on the same time to go to the same place, exchange the monies at the end, tracking the gas, like you're like, this is a road trip, but it's not just road trip, because you need cars, you need cards, you need to know that the car that you're going in, for example, is going to get you to the place that you're going to like. It is an effort that teaches you to do it in other aspects of the game. I think one of the big things that you can think about that you're doing in Magic that you can apply other places. Like, have you ever written your own sideboard guide? Because guess what? Doing that action and planning ahead like that can also be applied to planning your Magic season, to the time that you need to spend to testing, to your VOD reviews, to like all of that stuff, all of that type of planning that you're doing. You extrapolate that. You use those same skills.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of takeaways from Magic that you get to apply to different places in your life. I have definitely used sometimes you can do everything right and still lose, and that's just something that happens. I've also used something didn't work out, let me examine all of my input into this and see if I made a mistake along the way, and try to dispassionately analyze it, even if it's something with significant consequences to my own life. Is this my fault that it happened? And in some ways, like, having to do that so many times in Magic has made it a little bit easier for my life. Also, the rides thing, God, that is the key to everything, right? Like that core value that like a local competitive Magic scene has of like, oh, you started coming to these tournaments, you are now one of us. uh we'll get you a ride, we'll get you the cards you need, like we're gonna make it happen, is something that I think that it's incredibly valuable. It's stunning to see when it happens a lot of the time. And I do just want to reach back and like, you know, applying that to more places in your life can only really be good, can only help the world, both in Magic and making sure that those invitations are extended kind of regardless of whether or not the person that they would be applied to like looks like you or comes from a similar background to you, and making sure to be open to allowing lots of different types of people into your group. And then outside of Magic, like that level of just easy giving is I don't know, something that I hope I aspire to, something that I know I fail at a lot, and that kind of can be frustrating to me when I know I'm not hitting these standards that other people have set in different contexts. And I would like to, you know, use that as a sort of guide. The, you know, give people the giving people rides is, man, that's where it's at.
Dude, I love what you said there, because not only does it also, sorry, I love it so much because it also makes the act of balancing easier for those people. It makes the act of balancing easier when we're wheeling. I did not think this is where this episode was going to go. I'm like, like, it makes it easier for everybody. Like, and I think that it's so tough to, like, you don't know everybody else's situation, right? And like the fact that we're so willing to like loan out cards and to, you know, give rides and to like, you know, the number, I don't know about you guys, but like the number of times we're like, we've just switched off buying lunch at a PTQ or an RCQ or whatever. Like the number of times where like maybe when I was laid off, like where I didn't actually have the money, I was just gonna not eat, and then somebody just bought me lunch, and you know that paying for it makes that life balance so much easier.
Yeah, I especially just talking about balance, like I think we've touched on the show many times before, but you know, a big part of the value of testing teams and of having a community and having people you can rely on or content creators you rely on, or you know, having a process you rely on for how you're doing things, that you can cover, right? We get more things done and communities are more able to succeed when everyone is chipping in effort. You can get a lot more ground covered with some good communication, aligned goals, and good work ethic towards it. And I think that, you know, when I look at different eras of my life as a Magic player, a lot of the success that I can credit comes from, you know, it wasn't necessarily that I was playing much better, but one of the inputs that really had changed was that, you know, my teammates around me and the people I was working with were like, we were all lockstep on the same page, with what we were trying to do, and we're able to accomplish a lot more than I ever could on my own, while I was still able to accomplish my own personal life goals. Like, you know, thinking back to like specifically like Lotus Box, something that I don't even know if you knew the CCR, but when Lotus Box first started, I think like a little bit before the house, Zan actually called me and wanted me to like, he wanted me to be one of the people in the house. He was like, yeah, we're doing the house, we're doing it. And I had to sit there and think, and I was like, honestly, I just made the decision to go back to school. I can't do this. And what that really meant was I was passing up an opportunity to work with an even more engaged people, because I knew my goals didn't align with that. And so then everything else came after that, be it that I was, you know, deciding how many hours I could really afford to spend, how many nights at the LGS were productive for me, you know, versus doing VOD reviews, versus, you know, like how many times am I organizing a big playtest session with my local play group to kind of get a sense of the gauntlet? How much time am I spending on my own things? Everything that came after that was all because I knew what that goal was for myself, and keeping that balance where I wanted it to be, as opposed to maybe where, you know, a different version of myself would have wanted at that time. And in general, like, you know, we can talk about, you know, time management strategies and, you know, making sure you're splitting your time between things that are easier to keep up with, like listening to a podcast on like your lunch break or your commute, or you know, just skipping out on listening to I don't know, what do kids do this day, having a brat summer, listening to Chapel Roan, like, you know, like skip out on the pop music for like, you know, an hour and take in a piece of content, or, you know, skip out on scrolling social media for an hour and, you know, find time to fit in something more productive towards your goals. Like, all these are great pieces of advice we can give, but ultimately, you know, none of it is going to be comparable to what you really get, and none of it's going to matter unless you're really getting towards the heart of what your intention is and where you want to go, and how you're, like, what the balance you want to strike is in your life. And I think that, you know, all these things are all great ways to make sure that you can get to further goals for yourself than you might think is possible with the balance you want to achieve, how you can get more without trading off as much, you know, through leaning on your community, establishing good relationships with the people around you, and finding good partnerships and working relationships that work for you, finding good processes that work for you. But, you know, nothing's more important than making sure that you're where you want to go, somewhere you can get, and finding ways to do that, I think is of the utmost importance.
I love that. That's gonna do it for the main topic. With that being said, though, C's here. I just want to give you a chance to plug whatever you want to plug, whatever shout outs you want to give. You know, before we say goodbye to you, I want to give you the kind of the podium here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I got my own podcast. Check out the MTG Grindcast, the Spike is podcast, and all of Central North Carolina. I mean, we are a little bit different from some of the other shows in that it is me and Lee, one of my closest friends in the world, and we kind of hang out and talk about Magic each week. You know, we'll get to some topics. We have, it's, I think it's worth listening to, but to be honest, if your primary experience of Magic podcasts is I want to put this on and feel like I'm hanging out with two of my friends who like to talk about Magic, that's what we provide, and I think it's fun. So
were we
you know,
on your Wrapped?
I do not use Spotify, so
But
I have to say,
you claimed your podcast on Spotify, though, I assume, right?
yeah.
So no. Your creator Wrap will show you what shows
Oh,
your
sure.
listeners listen to.
Sure. Yeah, I have not checked that.
Okay.
I will say I did get name dropped last week as being the coiner of the banana article.
Yes.
Which already is, you know, I think you're really selling the show short by making, which is very you. You're really humble, honestly. Yeah, and you know, I don't want you to sell your show short here. I am a really big fan. Obviously, I'm just personally a big fan of you and Lee, being friends of mine for many years. But I think just the amount of, just a good blend of being the people you are, and like you said, like getting that hangout vibe, and also just you know, you do have a lot of your own insights and your own work that you're showing on the show when you're talking through things. That's really valuable listeners of your show, and I know that you also have on a lot of guests who are friends of the show too. I know like Jesse is a frequent, semi-frequent one. I know Jarvis and you play test together a bit, and I know that he's been on the show a couple times recently. He's been on our show as well. So yeah, definitely to a lot of our listeners.
Your regular guests have all been on the show, and like our show in like the last 2 years.
Yeah, there's a little overlap. I mean, you know, the community is not that big. Especially,
Yeah.
I feel like we have similar values, and so the people we end up liking a lot end up being a lot of the same people, and
Sure.
I think that that's kind of a natural place to end up.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I'm really thankful you were able to come on. I know it was kind of a like behind the scenes for the listeners, if this makes it on the show, but it was a bit of like last second scheduling here and there, and trying to make it connect. But I'm really happy. This was a great conversation.
I'm really glad we can make it work. This was super fun.
I just want to thank you for coming on too. Like, it's a topic that it's funny. Like, so many of the CCMD topics are like, here's this hard concrete thing that you can do to like improve at this thing. And when Abe texted us and was like, this is what he wants to talk about, I was like, I love that topic. Also, like, it can't be that style of CCMDG episode. Which,
yeah, I don't know if anybody's leaving here like, oh yeah, now I got a list of how to make this work. I'm not confident that we gave you the tools.
I don't think they're. I mean, I think, you know, process, time management, honesty with yourself, like that type of stuff is what I hope that they come out of with it. But thank you so much. If people want to find you, where can they do that, other than your podcast?
I am no longer active on Twitter, so find me on Blue Sky CCR hyphen Grindcast. That's probably the main place to interact with me. And yeah, check out the podcast at me on Blue Sky, and I'll see you around. Come talk to me at a tournament. I'll be at Atlanta.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, and we will be right back in just a minute. That was fun. I never met him before. I like him a lot.
Yeah, he's great. I think their show's great. I think also like this style of episode, like he's really easy guy to talk to, and I think that, you know, we went a lot of places with that conversation. And I think if that's the kind of thing, like I hope listeners do really appreciate it. I think that's the kind of thing you can really expect out of their show as well. And again, I want to thank Grindcast for and CCR of Grindcast for coming out, and then hopefully start of next year is what we're shooting for. I'll be able to go on their show, and you know,
nice. It's fun. It's a fun cross promotion. I love it. If you want to support this show, though, head over to patreon.com/ccmtg. Become a patron of the show. Every week on the show, we like to give a shout out to our newest patrons. We don't have any this week. This is actually something that's pretty typical. December is usually a little slower to gain patrons, as you know, that is the time of year where people have family and life stuff and a balance that they have to do. But we still appreciate all the patrons that we have now. And if you want to become one of those, the Discord is at $5 per month. It's actually one of the cheapest, Discords. We do monthly patrons rather than per episode. And it makes it a little bit cheaper for everybody. So, but if you are a patron in the Discord, you get access to the Patreon questions part of the Discord, where I grabbed one from way back when, one of our old ones. So we got a little bit of a backlog, Gabe. And this one's from Mikey. He says, rank your top 5 modern decks of all time. And I was like, oh man, now that, you know, Modern's about to change, this might be a fun time to talk about. Do you know my number 1?
Your personal number 1?
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy.
I'm going to assume it's Flooded Grove Scapeshift.
Flooded Grove Scapeshift? Do you mean Teamer Scapeshift?
I do. Flooded Grove Scapeshift, yes.
Yeah, so like back in Splinter Twin times, the Cryptic Command Snapcaster Mage era of Magic, Scapeshift had a really good twin matchup, like really good. So it was a heyday for me in like a lot of ways. Also, like, you ever Snapcaster back a Farseek to like make your own Solemn Simulacrum? Let's go.
I would never. I want you to know, I would never be Snapcasting Farseek. You would catch me missing my land drop and dying with 5 drops in the hand before I Snapcast a Farseek.
You're missing out, man. That's just a good time. What's your name?
You're saying build your own Solemn Simulacrum like you're gonna draw a card when that Snapcaster dies.
No, you do not. You do
That's
not.
crazy.
What's your number 1? Is it Hammer
Give me
Time?
your 5 first.
Give me
and then
all 5 of mine. Number 2 is probably just like, I had my first PTQ top 8 ever with just Bloodbraid Elf, Jund. So it's got like a special place in my heart. Like, before the era of, it was funny. I posted this in the Discord. I was like, do you guys remember when Lingering Souls was like the staple of Modern, to the point where you would play Thunder Maw Hellkite in your Modern decks?
That was good times. That was good times. Love a Thunder Maw Hellkite.
So yeah, Jund is probably 2. Murktide, like Blue-Red Murktide, might be number 3. I really loved that deck. It might be a controversial one, the like historical aspect, but like it's pretty high up there for me. Birthing Pod, that Modern format was so goated, dude. I can't believe that we strayed so far from the truth. But like, Birthing Pod would probably be up there at like the 4 or 5 slot. It was funny. I was talking to Matt Kling about Birthing Pod the other day while we were playing a Modern Challenge together, or maybe we were playing a League. I don't know. He says we were. It's his number 1 deck of all time, and we were both like, yeah. But if like Birthing Pod existed now, it would just be a turn 3 combo deck that would win every single time. Like they're like, it would be figured out so fast. Whereas like then you were like playing Kitchen Finks, which is like wild.
Oh yeah, no one could beat the Finks.
And then I think Amulet Titan is like pretty high. It's either Amulet Titan or Tron. I like Big Mana decks.
All right, so my top 5. This is gonna be in no particular order. This is gonna be 5 decks that I think were and are great decks that if you ever get the chance in your board, you want to proxy up some period accurate Modern, you should play. That's my quantifier. Okay. If you want to go have fun with friends and relive the glory days of Modern, or experience what the glory days of Modern were, check out these. Okay, the actual number 1 is just Hammer. Like Luris post nerf companion Hammer. That deck's just so good. Honestly, even without Luris,
Snapcaster control deck was gonna be
after Luris, even then, like that's fine. Yeah, Hammer is definitely the most fun deck I've ever played. I love that deck so much, and it makes me so sad every time I look at Modern Horizons 3 as a set and realize I can no longer play that. Second in my top 5, I'm gonna say is Affinity. Like, just Arcbound Ravager, Etch Champion, Cranial Plating Affinity. Circa like 2016 or whatever, Mox Opal still legal, all the goodness. It was constantly so good, and but also so hateable. Just a really, really great deck. 3, I'll say 4-color control, as in the Jeskai deck with Lingering Souls that John Skennick took to like an open top 4 in like 2016 or something. I think I want to play a variant of that deck right after Jeskai Nahiri really took off. So whenever that was, which I think means it was 2016. But like the things that people were doing that format, or like people were not willing to do, were just crazy. And like putting Lingering Souls in the Jeskai was really awesome, and it just made for a really fun game. And like you played so many random one-ofs. Like it was just a different time. Magic was such a different game. Let's see. 4. Hollow One for sure on the list. Honestly, find any aggro deck. I'm not going to give number 5. Find any aggro deck that involves like bringing dice with you for sure, and like especially bonus props for a weird combination of dice. Like you need a D8 so that when you cast, or like you need like a D12. So if you have drawn up to 8 cards in hand and you cast the Goblin Lore down to 7, and then you draw 4 cards, you need to be able to roll with a random outcome of 1 to 11. Like,
I literally forgot about the GP that Matt Kling. He's like, this deck is broken. We are both playing it. We both cashed, and it was we played Dicetron before it got banned. And it was like before it got popular, and that's
like Surge Node and everything.
I don't know. I don't remember. I don't even remember like the exact deck list at this point. But like it was like the Karn Mystic Forge Dicetron deck. I think it was Mystic Forge.
Yeah, it had like Everflowing Chalice.
Yeah.
Surge Node is the one where like you tap it and put a counter.
Yeah,
you move a charge. It just has 4 charge counters.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, you just like start. You just
I forgot about that deck.
Everything.
That deck was so like I went into that GP raw too. Like I did like, and that deck was busted. That deck was so good.
Yeah, I think really the answer is just I almost want to take Hammer off the list. Go back and just play like some 20. Go if you can. I don't even know if these still exist. If you can find a daily event from like 2014 or 2015 Modern, like right after the Philadelphia bans or something between the Philadelphia bans, like while Twin's legal, but people start playing it yet for some reason, like
Joe,
somewhere in that time.
Dude, just go watch Worlds, Jacob versus Reed, like that. The Boggles versus versus Kitchen Finks matchup in the finals was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of great decks out there in Modern's history. I think just about none of them include the One Ring.
We didn't say anything.
It's true. We didn't. You know what? I didn't even have to say that. Yeah, that's on me. That's on me. I'm doing too much.
If you want to check out our sponsor, untap.gg, they are the #1 deck tracker, and they even have more features now on their website. It just use the link in the show notes. We get a kickback, and you know. It helps out a ton, as well as checking out the swag store. If you're on YouTube, it's right there. There should be a link in the show notes, whatever podcast platform you are listening to. But let's talk about always improving. It is the point of the show. Abe, you were gone last week. One of you first.
Yeah, so my always improving this week comes from striking a new balance in like a new space, not just like within Magic and trying to figure out how I'm going to be, and also figuring out how currently I'm staying on top of things and keeping my goal, like I said in the episode, of making sure that come the time where I'm actually able to participate in RCQ season, I'm not learning from the ground up. Keeping up with what people are saying the best deck is, what the builds are looking like. I've really been paying attention to more and more Magic, like spending more of my time watching Magic streams, especially like big shout outs to Join Exploration, the CFT Sock and Jason stream that happens 2 or 3 nights a week now on Twitch. Definitely, if you have not heard about that, go and check it out. It's really interesting to like just see the two of them tweak with decks and like fiddle around and talk through what they're thinking and kind of hear how they think, even if sometimes the decks they play seem kind of rancid and don't wind up turning out well. I think that's a really important part of the process to be privy to. And so if you have not heard of that, I would definitely implore you to check it out. But also just figuring out, with, and like kind of as an ongoing thing, now that, so much of my space and life is changing, kind of developing entirely new routines and habits in that, and changing, just like embracing it and undergoing a lot of change in my life in general. But also using that as a catalyst to evaluate, what are the things that I was doing, or how was I allocating my time? How am I going to build a new process that incorporates into the new limitations or new opportunities in how my life looks now after all those changes, as opposed to how it has been. And, kind of, especially going into a new year, evaluating what what I want that to look like, what those goals are, and what I'm able to do. So that's been a lot of what I've been doing and thinking about, especially when it comes to Magic. The last
It's
last
the
couple
theme
weeks
of the show pretty well. For me, I took a little bit of a break after the podcast last week, just because I was so in the streets, just to get ready for the Rules of Engagement episode. Which, by the way, just huge shout out to everybody who gave feedback on that episode. Although no YouTube comments, come on guys. But people really thought we did a good job with that, and that was really appreciated because I felt like it was one of our better episodes in a lot of ways.
Honestly, from now on, whenever I get a comment about an episode we do in like a DM or whatever, I'm literally going to just reply, "That's awesome. Go say it on YouTube." That's my new.
It really does help. Like the we're not joking. It's funny because we're laughing, but like actually, the YouTube comments.
It's funny because like, what does it take? You know, what's it?
No, I took a little bit of break, and then getting back into it, like, we are finally having an RCQ where we're all going again between Heezy and the Bees, our little trio team of me, Matt, and Quentin, former co-hosts. Just this weekend, it's the 1K plus, usually 2K event at Lehigh for the RCQ, and like, I just, playing a lot of Magic with Matt is like one of my favorite things in the whole world, and like playing with other people does something so different than just sitting in front of my computer jamming games on Arena or Moto, where like we had a line where I was playing too fast, and he had a line that actually would have won me a game that I ended up losing that was really close. Like I lost by exactsies and would have won the next turn, like type of situation. And it's so refreshing to have that type of thing again, where like you're on a call with somebody, or you play a Magic versus each other, and you go from there. And there's something really, we talked about it a little bit on this episode. There's something really valuable of those relationships, and like when you get to utilize those relationships to their maximum. And that's kind of how I've been improving this week. It's just, I mean, I don't know if you saw how well Matt Kling has been doing in the challenges, Abe, but he won and took second in like back-to-back challenges.
Yeah,
and, like
he's been cooking.
Yeah, and it's just been fun to just like have him in that mindset again, because he's such a valuable asset in my life.
Yeah, I also gotta say, like, just about birding and like having someone to jam with, like one of the absolute best things, especially even just leading up to the last RC, that I was able to make happen in my play group and have been continuing to encourage, and like we have like a big Maryland, Virginia, like Magic Grinder Discord that kind of just happened out of happenstance, especially like for just organizing like local limited things. But at a certain point, we just all started hopping in, and like it started with just Moto Cube draft. It was like, oh yeah, vintage cubes up, cube hang, it's happening. But like the more you get those hangs happening, and the more it just transitions and bleeds into other things, like the amount of learnings you get from getting the community together like that, and watching matches and doing VOD reviews and things like that, it's just
it's the best.
It's irreplaceable. Yeah. And I'm sure that Matt gets a lot out of being able to have you there birding and getting to bird you too. Like I know you're saying, like, I know he's been on a tear, but you gotta give yourself a little pat on the back for that. You wouldn't be able to do it alone.
Absolutely. I think that, like, today he made a boneheaded play in the challenge that I didn't correct, that I was like, I don't know that we should play this, but like I didn't stop him, then I should have. So I should make my voice heard a little bit more too. But
how we all get better.
All right, that is going to do it for Always Improving. Just want to give a huge shout out to Mason. We love you, man. Sorry to miss you this week. You can join the conversation in the Patreon Discord as well as the public Discord. Just check the link in the show notes. And then, as we said, YouTube comments is a great community. Talk to each other. Talk to us. I try to respond to as many as possible. It really does help the show out. And then you can find the show on Blue Sky and we're technically still on Twitter. I still post there as well as Facebook. Just look for Constructive Criticism. You will find us. And then don't forget to check out. I just want to give a shout out to Drafting Archetypes because we haven't in a while. Well, that show's so banging, dude. Like,
it really is.
I can't believe
it really is.
And he just like it's like 30 minutes to 45 minutes of just such good information. So like,
yeah.
I don't know. I haven't talked to him about his plans for like Pioneer Masters and stuff. But like, because Foundations just did not get the love that it deserves, and
I hope they keep on bringing back Foundations because it's going to be around for so long. But it was really like, it was good to experience a core set draft format again. Like I got to play a little bit of it.
I played way more drafts of this set than I have in the last little while. So, where can people find you?
People can find me over at Blue Sky. Find me over More Nothings. What is it? BSKY. Whatever it is, you search More Nothings, you'll find me. My DM, and I'm still on Twitter. I have actually locked down the account. I intend to stop posting there with any intent.
Are you finishing out your thing?
I am. That's actually the only reason I'm still posting out there. Like I'll retweet some stuff, and I know there's still some people out there, but honestly, I've seen at least 100 users who were following me completely deactivate their Twitter accounts.
Oh, dude, I lost so many followers.
Yeah, a ton of followers, and also like I can just tell. Honestly, my Blue Sky feed moves about as much as my Twitter feed does, and that's saying something because on Twitter I follow like 7 different news accounts that I don't follow on on Blue Sky. So it's as far as all my Magic stuff, find me on Blue Sky. And yeah, if you are interested in coaching, I will have some spots open up at the start of next year, so start of January, and you can start getting in with those with me by sending me an email or a DM request. Email is morenothings@gmail.com.
You can find me at Spencer13H on Blue Sky. I think it's He's a Game on Threads every week on... I got to edit this week's episode of Need to Nerd. We got really good feedback about our rom-com episode a few weeks ago, which was nice. But it's nice to kind of see that podcast growing because it's a labor of love. Like it's not have the listenership that this one does, and it is literally just me talking to one of my best friends about nerdy crap that we enjoy. And yeah, you can reach out to me for coaching. It is spencerhowland@gmail.com. It's just my name. I say this every time because I think it's important. Like, I'm really looking for people that are a good fit, that are either wanting to have coaching for a testing team on process stuff, or people that are RCQ players trying to, or PP, or what, I don't even remember what they're called right now. PPTQ players trying to make it to the RC. Is really, really where I feel like I shine and I have the best interaction. So if you're one of those players, go ahead and reach out. I think that I can help with both large testing teams, medium-sized testing teams in that situation. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. Thank you, Abe, for arranging our guest. And thank you so much to CCR for coming on the show. We'll see everybody next week with another episode of Constructive Criticism.